Oh, let's take a day to you this day of your time. How are you all? All right. First of all, once again, we thank each and every one of you for your participation in the co-creation of this interaction and allowing this transmission to occur. This day of your time, this transmission is part 2, as you call it, of a 3-part transmission. Last night of your time, in your time, moments ago to us, we spoke about the idea of 15 minutes and counting, wherein we described the idea of the plasticity of the neurological net of the brain, and how every thought, every idea, every feeling, every belief, every definition changes, literally changes the pathways, the neurological pathways of the brain, and how, in what we are about to transmit, the information therein can allow you more efficacy in taking those changes and forming those changes along certain vibrational lines to instill certain pathways that will become more superconductive and hyperconductive, to allow you to become a more refined antenna, to allow the brain to become a more refined receiver of the downloads from the higher mind, so that the physical mind, in having that brain rewired into a more receptive, more clearly receptive antenna, then the physical mind can take what it perceives as more representative of the vibration of the download from the higher mind, and you can be more in accord, more in alignment, more in agreement with the idea of the guidance of the higher mind. In understanding that it takes about 15 of your minutes from the beginning of the rewiring for that rewiring in the brain to go from a plastic state to once again a crystallized state and hardwire itself with the new information. This transmission has been designed, and later on the holotope experience specifically has been designed to allow, during that plastic state, when it is going from rewiring to hardwiring, to be imbued with the appropriate frequency to ensure as best as possible that when it is hardwired, it retains the appropriate vibration that will allow your brain to become a clearer receiver and an antenna for the download vibration from the higher mind. But before we get to that point, in our 3rd part of the transmission, we would now like to examine and explore with a kind of an X-ray approach the idea of what beliefs are, what it is you are specifically looking to change. And this is why we have entitled the idea Brick Walls and Beliefs, because we understand that very often when you have a belief and you wish to change it, you say you prefer to change it. Sometimes we know that many of you experience a great degree of difficulty in allowing that belief to change. So what we are going to examine today is the actual nature of, the actual structure of beliefs, so that perhaps by gaining some insight into the actual structure of the belief, you will understand how it is organized to perpetuate itself, and you will perhaps also gain greater understanding in understanding that how that organization works, and how you can, in a sense, break it down, how you can deal with the different components of the belief, how you can recognize the different tricks, in a sense, that negative beliefs have in their toolkit to perpetuate themselves and make it seem as if it is difficult or maybe even impossible to change that negative belief. The idea, first and foremost, as we have discussed before, of course, is that when you attach certain kinds of beliefs to your motivational mechanism, you are then automatically and immediately propelled in the direction of reinforcing that belief. And the idea of the motivational mechanism is, again, quite simplistic. You are always motivated by the same mechanism to do whatever it is you choose to do. Always, without exception. You only have, really, 2 basic motivations that are really simply different sides of one motivational mechanism. Your motivational mechanism is simply that you will always immediately move in the direction of what it is you perceive to be or define to be more pleasurable, you will always, and immediately move away from what you define to be or perceive to be more painful. The key herein is the idea of what it is you define, what it is you believe, what it is you perceive to be pleasure and pain. Many of you say that you, in a sense, intellectually recognize what it is you prefer, and yet you do not necessarily understand why it is you do not choose it, why it is you do not always act on it. This comes down to the motivational mechanism and recognizing that if you had a positive belief system attached to that so-called preference, you would immediately choose it. And if you are not choosing it, if you are not behaving in that direction, if you are not acting on it, what that immediately tells you without exception is there must be a negative belief attached to your actual preference that is making you see it in a light that makes it not something you actually prefer to choose. So the important thing is to find out what belief you have attached to the idea of your so-called dream, your so-called preference, that makes it seem to be anything but your preference. And once you find out what belief that is that you have attached to that preference, you will know immediately why you are not choosing it. Many individuals will actually remain in a painful state even over the idea of what they say they prefer to choose because of the belief systems they have attached to the thing that they say is representative of their passion, which then makes their passion actually seem more painful of a choice than the pain they are already choosing. Many times it is as simple as fear of the unknown, not wanting to move forward in a direction that is unfamiliar to you and staying with the pain just because the idea of the pain being familiar makes it seem as if that familiarity, that pain and that familiarity is actually preferable to the idea of the fear of the unknown, and therefore you remain in the pain, as painful as it is, just because it's something that you know, as opposed to something that you don't, if you have a belief that says that unknown is to be feared. It is as simple as that very often. But it requires of you the ability, the willingness to examine and explore why you have those beliefs and why you have attached them to that motivational mechanism and why you have attached them to your preference in that manner. One of the things we will also be discussing in this segment is the whole concept of, in a sense, what you call manifestation. Now, let us provide you a slightly different idea and understanding of the concept of manifestation. Because many of you, when you think about the idea of attempting to manifest something, bring it into your reality, make it appear, solidify it, crystallize it, make it experiential, are coming from a point of view, also definitionally and belief system related, that it is something that does not exist in your reality, that you are attracting into or bringing into your reality, that somehow it is ephemeral and non-physical, and you have to somehow make it solid, make it appear, make it real. That is not the case. What it is that is representative of your preference and what you call your desires to manifest already exists in your reality. It is already manifest. The idea of manifestation is not bringing something that doesn't exist into existence or attracting something over there and bringing it over here. The idea is that what you desire to manifest is already here, already existent, already real. Manifestation is the process of giving yourself the ability to realize, to perceive that it is already here. You do not have to do any magical thing to make it come into existence. It is already existent. It's already within your sphere of reality. It is just that your belief system makes it invisible to you. So manifestation is not the process of actually conjuring something out of nothing. It is the process of making the invisible visible. And that simply requires an alteration of perception. That's all it takes. So we are going to be talking about that idea as well. And let us begin right there. The idea of one of the mechanisms of manifestation that allows the invisible to become visible is something that uses the power of paradox very strongly. We often talk about the idea of paradox as the recognition that you are in a very powerful place, right in the center of your power. Because what to you may seem paradoxical, what to you may seem contradictory, two opposing ideas that cannot necessarily seem to coexist, but do coexist, tells you right then and there that there must be a middle ground from which they both come. And that middle ground, that balance point, is your place of power from which you have generated the apparently paradoxical and apparently contradictory concepts. But because you can perceive them both, it tells you that just the perception of those things alone tells you that you are actually in the center of those things, that they come from the center of your being, and that you're simply seeing reflections of the polarity, expressions of the polarity of creation. But polarity within you combines and interacts in a very specific way to generate your true perfect place of balance and perfect place of power. So when you see paradox, rejoice, because it is telling you that you're standing right at the center of your creative self and have the ability to thus then manifest and transform and make the invisible visible very quickly. Let us explain a little bit more clearly about the idea of the paradoxical nature of the mechanism of manifestation. Many of you have been taught to think about the idea of manifestation as an issue of intention, and as an issue of focus, as an issue of concentration. And in a sense, this is accurate. However, a very important point is often left out, or at the very least, sometimes this point is spoken of independently, and so no connection is made to the idea as a whole concept. The two seemingly paradoxical issues here are intention, focus, and concentration, and conversely on the other side, what you have often heard in many metaphysical and New Age information sources, the idea of surrender and letting go. These two things are not diametrically opposed. They are not mutually exclusive. They work together in a whole mechanism. In other words, the secret, one direction of the paradoxical mechanism is the idea of intention, focus, and concentration, and then, after that has been done, letting go and surrendering and letting the intention, focus, and concentration do its job on higher levels. Working these two things, linking these two things together gives you the entire mechanism of manifestation, or at least one direction of the energy. We will discuss the other direction in a moment. But first, let us again amplify this concept. And again, understand this connects to the notion of the 15-minute time span in the following way. Any time that you have a desire or a preference for a manifestation, the idea, yes, is that in a sense it must be representative of your passion. It must become your world. The intention, the focus, in a sense, the concentration, is there if that is representative of your passion. Because when something is representative of your passion, you're automatically focused on it. You automatically intend it. You're automatically concentrating all of your attention on that idea, because that's what passion does. If you are passionate about something, there is no other choice. There is no other consideration. All other things fall by the wayside. That is a true description of the idea of being in your passion. There simply is no other choice. So there is automatic focus, automatic intention. If then, in what you call a peaceful state or a meditative state or a focused state, you allow yourself to image that passionate idea, that manifestation that is desired, and feel it, and build that energy up in your energy, in your emotions, in your passion. Build that energy to a peak over the course of simply 15 minutes and no longer, sometimes even less, when you get proficient at it. You don't always need all 15 minutes, but 15 minutes at the most is all that is necessary for you to activate the idea of the wheels, of the gears, and put it in motion with regard to the idea of allowing the invisible to become visible. But when you do that, when you build it to a peak over the course of a few minutes or 15, the next step is to completely and utterly let it go. Forget about it. Stop caring about it. Let it go. Surrender it utterly to the higher self. Let the higher self now do the job. You see, physical reality, while apparently complicated at times, is actually not extremely complex. In a sense, it is actually built on very simple principles, and you don't actually have to do very much to get the ball rolling. So, because your physical mind, as we have said a few times, is not designed to understand how things are going to happen, how things are going to manifest, the how is the purview of the higher mind, and because the physical mind does not actually have the capacity, the capability to understand, it is not designed to understand how that's going to happen, all it needs to do is flip the switch and let the higher mind do the how, do the things that are necessary to cause the synchronicities in your life that need to be there, and the downloads and the inspiration that need to come to you to allow the invisible to become visible, to allow the manifestation to occur. So all you need to do is do it a little bit for no longer than 15 minutes, bring that up to a full peak of passion, a full peak of imagination, a full peak of visualization, however it is you wish to do it, with that intensity, that concentration, and that focus, and then utterly, utterly, utterly let it go. Now, we understand again that because of certain negative beliefs, many of you find it difficult to actually let it go. But that is very important, because without the letting go side, you don't actually have the whole mechanism engaged. It is important to understand that the intensity, focus, and concentration must be paired with the surrendering and the letting go to actually have the whole mechanism of manifestation. This is using the power of paradox built in to this idea, to this process, to this permission slip. Letting go means you really know that the higher mind, it's doing its job, and you can now relax. The physical mind can relax. It doesn't need to do anything else. It is not required, nor is it capable of doing anything else. So really, when you know this, you can allow your mind, your physical mind, to just let it go, knowing it is in good hands, in a sense, and get on about your day, focusing on the next most exciting thing you are capable of taking action on. At the same time, again, you must be clear, as we already said, about your motivations to ensure that what it is you are focusing on, what it is you are surrendering to, is truly representative of your highest passion, instead of something that is simply being labeled as such to actually act as an avoidance of what your highest passion actually could be. This is where you have to really be clear, again, about the idea of what beliefs you are dealing with. Because many of you often fool yourselves and trick yourselves through the negative belief system into thinking that you're acting on your excitement, when in fact you're actually acting out of anxiety and covering it up because you're afraid to look at the idea of what it is that actually does excite you because of all the negative beliefs you've attached to it. So clearing out your motivational mechanism and finding out what beliefs you have attached to it is the primary, first, and fundamental process that is required in order to actually use the tool of manifestation in a clear and concise and precise manner. Once you have your motivation clear and you know that what you are focusing on is truly representative of your passion, then you will find that this mechanism of manifestation works very, very strongly, very well, and often very rapidly. But the idea, again, is that you cannot worry it there. You cannot make it happen. You cannot Insist that it must happen at a certain time and in a certain way, because then you are once again putting conditions on it. You are not allowing yourself to truly let it go. You are not allowing thus then the higher mind to do its job. You're actually blocking the entire process by keeping, in a sense, the control, or trying to keep control of the situation within the physical realm. And the physical realm is not designed to handle energy in that way. It does not have the ability. It does not have the capacity to do the job of the higher self. It simply doesn't work in physical reality that way. It would be as if you dove down under the sea with your breathing apparatus, and then instead of allowing yourself to rise to the surface and taking your mask off, taking your breathing apparatus off, and taking a deep breath up there to go back into that realm, it is as if you are insisting, by trying to control it in physical reality, it is as if you are taking off your mask, taking off your breathing apparatus underwater, and inhaling, and wondering why you start choking, and wondering why you cannot see that far anymore, why things are suddenly murky and muddy, and why you are suddenly drowning. The idea is you must allow yourself, your whole self, to participate in this idea of creation of your reality. And you are not a whole self. You are not a whole person unless you allow the physical mind and the higher mind to work in concert. We know many of you have been taught to think that the idea of the higher mind, being that it is non-physical, is somehow not really a part of who you are as a person. It's something else, somewhere else, on another plane, on another level, and has nothing to do with what you're supposed to be doing as a personality in terms of guiding yourself through life. But that is not the case. In order to actually move through physical reality as a whole person, you need the back and forth. You need to work in concert. You need a partnership between physical mind and higher mind so that you can actually function as a whole person and use each component in the way it was designed to be used, so that you can then allow the mechanism of manifestation and the creation of your reality to work in an effortless and aligned way with the idea of the vibration of yourself as a total being. So, the idea of the power of paradox in this manifestation mechanism is also working in the opposite direction. For as you allow yourself to have the intensity of focus on your highest passion, and you allow that energy to build up to a pinpoint, a white-hot pinpoint of concentrational focus and imagery and energy and emotional feeling, bringing it to that fever pitch, and then as you let it go, the idea that is moving in the opposite direction is the issue of concentration and expansion. The idea here is that as you actually concentrate, in a sense, as you bring things down to a pinpoint, you're actually raising the frequency, you're actually expanding the frequency of your energy by focusing it down to such a small focus, small passionate pinpoint. You're actually expanding your energy in a sense, building it up. In that sense, reaching out, letting it expand, because you are now focused solely on your passion, more in alignment with your true core natural self, so your energy will expand. As you let go, in a sense, the energy then collapses back to your physical self. But as it has done so, it is similar to what your physicists call the collapse of the waveform. What this means is, as you focus and as you concentrate, and as you expand and expand and expand your energy bubble, you are containing all probable ways of manifestation that are best for you, that could occur. You're expanding your probability net. And as soon as you then surrender and let it go, and that energy bubble collapses back down to your immediate reality, you are allowing the bubble to then automatically choose the highest probabilities that will actually help you bring the manifestation into your awareness. So this is the paradoxical mechanism, is as you focus, as you concentrate, as you, in a sense, narrow your field of view on the thing that you are most passionate about, you actually expand your bubble of energy probabilities. And as you let it go, as you release, as you surrender, you actually allow the bubble to collapse down to the most likely ways, the paths of least resistance that are there for you to bring the kind of synchronicity into your life that will most likely, most probably allow for that manifestation to occur in the most effortless, most rapid way possible. So now, let us move forward into the understanding that in using the power of paradox in this way, in understanding how this mechanism works, the most important factor in this entire process or permission slip is getting a handle on the beliefs themselves that are at play in this mechanism. Because it is only the beliefs, it is only the definitions that will color these mechanisms. These mechanisms work automatically. They are neutral. You don't have to do anything special in a sense to make them work. They work for everyone. They work for everyone the same. Throughout creation, they work for everyone the same. It is just what is built in to the structure and nature of existence itself. Because existence is, in that sense, constantly the fluctuation of the polarities, the fluctuation of the paradoxes. It is constantly coming and going. It is constantly creating and renewing. It is constantly, in that sense, breaking down and building up. That mechanism is built in. It is the breathing in and the breathing out. It is the yin and the yang. It is always there. You don't have to do anything special to make the mechanism work for you. This is not about learning how to work the mechanism. This is about how to allow the mechanism to work in the clearest possible way, in the most aligned way with who you truly are, by clearing out the belief systems and the definitions that have nothing to do with you. The things you have inherited, the things you have had handed down to you, the things that come from other people that are not you. This is this. Right now, this idea of this structure, in understanding how beliefs are structured and thus then how they color your utilization or your ability to recognize the utilization of these mechanisms. Positive beliefs, as you may observe on the diagram, are by definition, in a sense, expansive. You have a positive belief. All beliefs, even positive beliefs, have a mechanism within them that are self-reinforcing, self-perpetuating. They have to, by definition. Otherwise, if they didn't, because beliefs really are ephemeral, if they didn't have a self-reinforcing component, you would not be able to actually have a sustained, perpetuated experiential reality in that belief. You would not be able to see the manifestation of that belief if they didn't constantly perpetuate themselves, because they are constantly being chosen. Second to second to second to second to second to second to second. It may seem as if, it may appear as if in the illusion of space-time, in the illusion you create of continuity in space-time, it may seem as if once you have chosen a belief and it perpetuates itself, it may seem as if it is the exact same belief just rolling along and rolling along and rolling along. But that's not exactly what's happening. The idea of the perpetuation of the belief, the idea of the inertia and the momentum, is simply that the perpetuation mechanism is designed in such a way as to inspire you, shall we say, to continue to choose the same belief again in the next moment. Because in the next moment, it is a whole new reality. You actually have to keep choosing the belief every single nanosecond in order to actually have an experience of ongoing perpetuation. So the idea of the self-perpetuating mechanism in a belief is not that it simply has an automatic momentum that carries it through space-time. It is that it has an automatic perpetuation mechanism that seems to make it, that makes it seem like the thing to keep choosing over and over and over and over and over again. Because as you do that, you are actually creating a new reality, new reality, new reality, new reality, new reality. But if you are, in a sense, buying into the perpetuation mechanism of that belief, positive or negative, then what you're doing is creating a completely new reality every moment that looks very much like the reality you created a moment ago. And as you keep creating similar realities, you thus create the illusion of continuity, that it is the same reality and only changing slightly, instead of understanding that it is a completely different reality that has changed completely, except you are making it seem as if it hasn't by simply allowing yourself to buy into the rationale of the perpetuation mechanism that says that that belief must be recreated again and again and again and again and again and again and again. Now, when it is a positive belief, obviously this is representative of alignment with your true natural core self, and you don't mind that it is, in a sense, inspiring you to recreate it again and again and again and again. But where you have your difficulty is when you don't understand why you are recreating the negative beliefs that you say you don't prefer again and again and again and again. As you can see from the diagram, and even though this is an oversimplification, it will do to illustrate the point, because of the nature of positive beliefs being integrative in that sense, they are, in a sense, more simply structured. They don't need to be complicated. They don't need to be, in that sense, very diverse, because that is in alignment with your true natural vibration. Therefore, they are very simply structured. However, negative beliefs, because negative energy is that which dissociates, segregates, compartmentalizes, rigidizes, separates, needs a larger bag of tricks to sustain itself. Thus, it will go from the fluid, ever-expanding positive structure, the simplistic, expanding circular structure, in a sense, euphemistically, to the rigidized, crystallized, and non-expanding structure that will thus then contain several compartments and several bags of tricks that it uses to reinforce itself, to make it seem like the thing to keep choosing over and over and over again. And here is where the X-ray vision comes in very importantly. You have to recognize what those tricks are, and thus then by recognizing them, by identifying them, catch yourself, so that you are not then simply succumbing to the rationale that you have to keep creating and choosing to create in every new reality that belief over and over and over and over and over and over again. Let us examine some of these ideas. One of the first differences that becomes evident between the positive and negative belief system, the positive and negative definition, is that while certainly even the belief contains this perpetuation mechanism, it also always brings with it the freedom to choose. It always allows you the ability to know you can change the belief. So the first difference, one of the major differences in the negative belief, because when you operate from fear-based beliefs, it is automatically keying into what you call your survival instinct. In other words, fear-based beliefs lock into your survival instinct, your physical survival instinct, in such a manner as to first perpetuate the idea that if you don't follow this belief, if you don't perpetuate this belief, you will die. So it relies heavily on tricking you into believing that if you change that belief, there will be nothing left of you, that the belief is all-consuming, that the belief is all representative of your true self, and that if you change it, what you're doing is committing suicide. That's one of the first tricks it has up its little sleeve, to allow you to perpetuate it and perpetuate it and perpetuate it, because it's a fear-based mechanism. Therefore, it is keying directly into your survival instinct mechanism and using it and amplifying and magnifying it to force you to perpetuate that belief so that you will survive. Now, the second thing that automatically happens when that mechanism is engaged, when you flip into the idea of a negative fear-based belief, is that in order for you to continue to perpetuate it, it must also reach into its little bag of tricks and make it seem as if it is not possible to change it. It simply cannot be changed. It simply doesn't have the ability to be changed. It must be perpetuated by its very unchangeable nature. So it traps you in a vicious circle of knowing that there simply is no way out at all, that the very nature, the very structure of the mechanism says there is no doorway here. It cannot be changed. This is where you live. There is nowhere else to go. This is your entire universe. It is eternal. It cannot change. But it also recognizes that it is fighting against, and I'm going to just use this terminology for now, it is fighting against a perpetual, non-ending, relentless stream of information from the higher mind attempting to reach your core being through this mechanism. Because the higher mind, the positive beliefs, and the higher mind are always sending information, always sending light, always sending guidance to guide you back to your natural self. Always. Within the yin and yang, there is always the opportunity to go in the opposite direction. Within the dark, there is always the doorway that leads to light. Within the light, there is always the doorway that leads to dark. But when you're in the light, you understand that that doorway that leads to the dark is just a choice, and it's only offered to you as an equal choice. But when you're in the dark, the doorway that leads to the light, from the dark's perspective, is something to be avoided at all costs. So even though it cannot actually close that doorway, it will thus then disguise the doorway with an illusion of unchangeability, so that you will not see the doorway, so that the doorway will become invisible to your consciousness, because as we have said, you cannot perceive what you are not the vibration of. When you are in an enlightened state, you can see all choices, even the negative ones, because they are all equal choices from the perspective of the higher mind. But when you are in the lower vibrational state of a negative belief and fear system belief, then the idea is that it must disguise these things that exist as choices to make it seem as if there is no choice at all. So, tapping into the survival mechanism, the first thing it does with that energy is it disguises, it covers up that doorway so that you don't even know you have a choice to go back into the light, because that doorway is always there. And the array of tools it uses to take your attention off that doorway, to make you look in any other direction other than that doorway that leads to the light, are these that are generally described surrounding the mechanism, like, in a sense, a viral cell. Like the idea of electrons around the nucleus of an atom. And it will constantly switch back and forth and use these other tools and techniques in a variety of ways, in a variety of combinations, to constantly keep you off balance, to constantly keep you unable to see that doorway that leads to the light. A variety of mechanisms, such as the idea of projection, such as the idea of rejection of ideas, such as the idea of paranoia, so that you will not believe what anyone is saying to you when they are actually attempting to help you, so that you can, in a sense, avoid all information that will actually be to your benefit by seeing it in a light, by projecting it from the dark vibration with a dark energy, so that even the light looks dark to you. And in that sense, seeing everything in a negative light will keep you off balance. The idea thus then of all these things working together will keep you completely off balance until such time as you give yourself the opportunity to recognize that this structure exists. This is where truly the phrase in your language, knowledge is power, comes into play. The very fact of illuminating this structure, the very idea of revealing and exposing in X-ray form that this structure exists, can give you an edge over it. Because once you've identified the structure, once you have identified the negative belief, once it becomes transparent to you and you understand what all the tricks are, something happens to that structure. You gain a perspective by being able to actually see it in front of your face, by actually having a diagram go through your eyes into your brain and start rewiring in your brain the recognition of the structure. The structure suddenly becomes illogical and nonsensical. You start to see your relative position to the structure and its relative position to you. You start seeing it as nothing but an illusion, nothing but a filter, nothing but a template overlaying the idea of your true self. And you start seeing the idea of you bouncing around in all these little crystalline rooms and being, in a sense, fooled and tricked into believing all the things that it is attempting to get you to believe to perpetuate itself from moment to moment to moment to moment to moment. Our personal favorite trick of negative belief is the one you see called reward. This is one of its most insidious little tricks. Negative beliefs will actually use positive reinforcement to reward you for buying into the negative belief, so that you will then only recognize it as the thing to do. This is where it uses the motivational mechanism. This is where it attaches an apparently rewarding result to having chosen the negative path, and makes you feel good about yourself and makes you feel safe and protected for having chosen the safer path, which is only another way of saying the negative belief in this case. So in recognizing that it does this, that it uses all these tricks, you can begin to really examine each and every one of these. And the way to use this template is to take specific negative belief ideas by examining them in ways that we have discussed before, by finding out what that belief is, such as, for example, I am unloved. And taking that and putting it in the center of that diagram and looking at all the different ways the tricks are used to reinforce the idea that you are unloved and to make it seem like the thing to keep choosing, to make it justified, rationalized, rewarded, to develop the paranoia that forces you to not look for the reality where you are loved. One of the most insidious ways it has of reinforcing your inability to go in that direction is to make you believe that if you actually go looking for the positive side of that belief, you won't find it, because there is no such thing. It can't be true. And thus then when you go looking and find out it doesn't exist, you will then be disappointed. You will then find out that you really are as bad as you've been told you are. And so to avoid that reinforcement of the negative self at all costs, you will simply stay within the negative self. Look at how insidious that is. It is actually saying, don't go looking to prove the negative. Stay in the negative you are in, because the negative you are in is at least better than proving that the negative is true. It's actually using itself to reinforce itself by saying you don't want to go and find out that what I'm telling you might actually be true, because at least here you have a shadow of a doubt, a tiny shadow of a doubt. I'll allow you that much. That's your reward. But if you go looking to find out whether or not what I'm telling you is true, well, you'll only find out that what I'm saying is true, and then there'll be no doubt whatsoever. So at least stay here and hold on to that tiny crumb of a doubt. At least that will allow you to survive. Miserably, but survive. But if you go looking and find out that what I'm telling you is the absolute truth and you are worthless, well, then your whole world will crumble. Then you will annihilate yourself. Then you will not survive. Because how could you possibly survive absolutely knowing that you don't belong in creation? How can you survive absolute knowledge that you are worthless? How could you survive that? You can't, says negative belief. You can't. So stay here and just play with that little doubt that I'm giving you, that it, well, I don't know, it could be true, that, or maybe it's not. I don't know, but this is safer. At least here I'm alive, as miserable as I am, so I'll keep perpetuating this, and I'll bring the doubt with me, and I'll keep wondering, could it possibly be true that I'm really this worthless? Maybe I'm not. Oh, but if you go looking, you might find out that you are. Okay, I'll stay here. Again and 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 again. But now, allowing your higher mind through our reflection to you to see the diagram of the tricks it is using to create these scenarios, to create the illusion that you must perpetuate the negative belief. This diagram will now begin to imprint itself in your neurological net just by looking at it. And when we do the holotope experience, the 15-minute meditation later, we will burn that image into your neurological framework, right into your template, so that from this point forward, you will not be able to forget that this bag of tricks is being used on you when you succumb to a negative belief. And that will give you an edge, just enough of an edge, so that when you find yourself falling into a negative belief and perpetuating it, and going, oh, poor me, this is my lot in life, I will never escape this, there is no way out, it's not changeable, what you're saying to me is not true, you are my enemy by telling me I am loved, then you will remember this template and suddenly go, oh, wait a minute, something's breaking through, I'm getting a whisper, I'm getting an echo from the higher self that this might just be a trick. You'll start remembering that the bag of tricks is being used on you, and suddenly you will realize the fallacy, the folly, the illogic of it, the nonsensicalness of it. You will recognize that it is just a belief like any other belief, that you don't have to believe what it is telling you, that you can believe what you prefer, you can switch over to the positive frame of reference, that you have freedom, that you have choice, that you have inspiration, that you have growth, that you have positive synchronicity instead of negative synchronicity, that you can expand instead of contract. And you can start to see through the illusion that the negative belief is desperately trying to get you to believe, because it is basing that desperation on the idea that if you let that negative belief go, you will die along with it. The idea, however, to also further understand is that that is also a fallacy. The negative belief will actually never die. It will simply become equalized as one of the many infinite choices you have to choose from. And you will see it that way from the positive side, from the positive perspective, that yes, that belief is still there. I could still choose that negative belief. But now that it is simply equal to any other choice, I prefer not to. I prefer this instead. So it will not really die, but it will do everything in its power to convince you that if you change your belief, you will annihilate that belief. And since that belief is all you are, you will annihilate yourself. You will be committing suicide by letting that belief go. And you will not find anything to replace it, because there is nothing to replace it. And you will wind up in emptiness, in a void, alone, miserable, forever and ever. Amen. That's the bag of tricks of the negative belief.
And I'll say good day to you, this day of your time. How are you all? All right. First and foremost, we would like to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you for co-creating the opportunity for this transmission this day of your time and in this way. Each and every time any member or group in your civilization allows us to communicate with you in this way, it forms a link, it forms a bridge between our respective realities, and through that link and through that bridge, it creates the vibration of a new third reality in which we can, every day, more and more, interact more closely. If, of course, that's your wish. It's up to you. The idea of contact with other civilizations is, of course, from our perspective, not something that should be forced on anyone. And one of the reasons why this kind of process takes a while is because we want to make sure it is always according to your choice, according to your preference. And not only that, but there are considerations that have to do with energy, psychology, and the foundations and fundamentals of your society. All these things must be taken into account and gauged and paced so that the process of forming contact takes its cue always from the rate at which your civilization is comfortable in allowing such a thing to happen. We will always respond to the invitation for contact from a civilization and have done so many times, but we always take our time to observe what the parameters of that civilization are on all levels possible to ensure that such a process of acclimatization is something that will happen in a way that best benefits the civilization with whom we are making contact, and happens in a way that the civilization can best process and apply in their own understanding of such things. For it would serve no purpose and no point at all for our, shall we say, presence to create disruption in your society. And we understand from observing and interacting with many of you for many of your years of counting that there are many individuals and many groups in your society that would find our presence disruptive according to what they believe their society is, according to how you have structured your society with regard to many different disciplines. It is always on our part wise to be cautious about exactly what kind of impact and effect the interaction with another civilization will have. And so, we take our time, we take the idea of precaution and open contact in ways that are relatively unobtrusive. For example, this kind of contact now that you are experiencing through the channel before you. Very often you will find that what we do is the beings that are trained in contact with other civilizations will actually choose from the spirit level an incarnation in that society. And as such, as example, the channel before you, the physical being before you, is my past self in your society. And I am what you would call in your future. But the idea is that by having a life, having an experience in the reality that is destined for contact, we thus then gather through that life, through that experience, an understanding of that civilization we otherwise would not have. Were it not for the fact that we have lives in the worlds that we eventually contact, we would be far too alien to each other to even understand each other conceptually. And so, by having the life, we gather experience, we gather understanding, we gather knowledge, and we recognize that we can draw upon that to gauge, help us gauge the rate at which and the style in which communication might best serve the overall purpose of the contact. And so, by using our own past selves as, shall we say, for lack of a better term, biological transceivers, we thus are capable of opening up a dialogue with the civilization in question. And by opening up a dialogue in this way, we thus then give off a certain frequency, a certain vibration of energy that attracts those to it who are of similar vibration in a sense, at least to some degree, or at least curious about such things, or open to such ideas to a certain degree, and thus begin, through such people as you call channels, dialogues that allow you to absorb information in your own way, in your own time, at your own pace. And by doing it in this fashion, it remains relatively unobtrusive, primarily because this particular style, this particular approach, does not in any way, shape, or form insist that you have to believe that we are who we say we are. And thus, it allows the contact to have a very, very light touch upon your society, because anyone can simply walk away from the conversation with any idea in mind that they wish to have about what just occurred. And we do not, in that sense, thus force our presence upon you, and thus interfere with your ability to decide whether or not the information works for you, whether or not the source that you believe it came from is actually the source. It allows the information itself to be paramount. And that is the most important thing. We are not important in this contact. You are important in this contact because it's your civilization, it's your world, and we will always take our cue from you as to what you believe is best for your society. We will never interfere, we will never push. That would serve no point, because if we did push, if we did intervene, if we did interfere, then we would only be interacting with the version of your society that our influence had created, and we would not then be able to really appreciate the unique point of view you bring to reality, to creation. This is one of the reasons that we do these things, that we interact with other civilizations such as your own, is because each and every being and each and every civilization is unique and allows us a unique perspective, a unique understanding of yet another way that creation has of expressing itself. And we learn just as much as you may learn from us. Because there are many things that you do on your planet we don't do. Yes, I know. And that is why many times we have created what might be called a little bit of a nickname for you in your language. We call you the masters of limitation. But that is not meant in any way, shape, or form in the negative. You see, from our point of view, in our experience, there are not many other civilizations we have encountered at this point that have experienced the idea of limitation to the degree that your world has. A few have, but not many. It's rare. But the idea is that makes you very powerful. It makes you very strong, because it's a very strong choice to make. You might euphemistically call your world and the few others that might be similar difficult schools, where you have the opportunity as beings, as souls, as consciousness, as spirit, to actually forget that you are connected to creation. For most civilizations, that's very difficult to do. But you have achieved it. You have mastered it. And that is a thing to be cherished. For only in such an experience of forgetfulness can you remember yourselves, can you rediscover yourselves from a very unique perspective. You can actually experience creation in the making, in that sense. The actual mechanism of manifestation, which on other levels would happen more or less instantaneously. You create a space-time frame of reference that allows you to actually slow the process down in such a manner and in such a way that it actually allows you to think about what choices you are making. You have created a world where choice is key, where you actually have an experience in making a choice, not just an instantaneous manifestation. Now, eventually, you will learn or remember how to create instantaneous manifestations as well. But you will have done that by coming through having forgotten how to do so. And that will add to the richness of the experience of your soul. And that will add to the richness of the experience of all that is. Because each and every one of you, as we said, is a unique point of view of creation. And creation cherishes, in that sense, values, in that sense, every single perspective, every single point of view. It adds to the totality of what you understand to be the infinite all that is. So it is a powerful thing to have chosen. It is, all right, if you wish, a brave thing to have chosen. But you are truly masters of it, because after what you would call hundreds, if not thousands, of incarnations in the idea of an experience of a forgetting plane, of a difficult plane, of a limited plane of existence, you are now arriving at a place and time in your cycle of life on your planet where you're beginning to remember who you really are. And that's what the whole idea of the so-called spiritual movement and the awakening movement and the New Age movement on your planet is all about. You're arriving at the end of the cycle of forgetting who you are because you've done just about every style of forgetting that you can do. You've played out just about every kind of limitation on earth that you can do. All of you, in all of the different kinds of incarnational experiences you have had, have experienced being the victim and the perpetrator, the poor and the rich, the queen and the beggar. You have all experienced the extremes of the polarities that can be experienced on your planet. And now you are arriving in a place and time where you are bringing all that to bear, pulling all that experience together to remind yourself now of how you can draw upon the richness of that experience to make these lives now, in your new time, your now time, be truly more representative of the kind of world you would like to have, to actually truly learn how to bring heaven down to earth. That's what it's all about, is manifesting a new reality that has never been manifested in a sense before in creation. By transforming the darkness into the light, you are creating a completely new experience that adds to the overall ability of all that is to experience itself. And that is a beautiful gift to have given to all that is, and we commend you for it, and we thank you for it, and we have absolute appreciation and gratitude for your willingness to have co-created that kind of an experience amongst yourselves. You are very powerful beings. Don't ever forget that. Now that you have arrived at a point where you're beginning to remember this, you are also becoming more aware of more things. You are becoming aware, once again, that there are realities beyond the physical. You are remembering that you are not just a physical person. You are aware of the idea that there are other beings in creation that also exist all around you. And you can thus then, as you have, begin to arrive at a point where you reach out with your minds, where you reach out with your souls, where you reach out with your hearts and your consciousness in a variety of ways, and reconnect to all of those other members of all that is. Family members, in a sense, that exist in other places, other times, other realities. You are gathering yourselves back together in an integrated way, leaving the ideas of segregation and separation behind now that they have served you, and are moving toward the idea of pulling yourself together in a more holistic way. And as you do that, you change your frequency, you change your vibration, you give off a completely different kind of energy that to us is like a marker, a sign, a signal, and an invitation that you are ready to begin a dialogue on a certain level that helps you remember more of who you are and helps you remember that there are others out here who also appreciate you and would love to interact with you and together expand together and create a new reality yet again on a different level altogether than what you've been creating. And so the dialogues have begun, not just from us, obviously. Many of you are aware that there are many different sources of information coming through many of you in a variety of ways. It doesn't have to be this way at all. Many of you are reconnecting to your own higher selves, your own guides, your own inner creative being, or the source of all that is. And you're doing it in a variety of ways creatively, through business, through art, through music, through whichever idea, through whichever methodology represents your particular unique expression of who you are in this life. And you're beginning to understand, not only just in what you call your metaphysical movement, but even in your quantum physical movement, the idea that space and time are really just your manufactured framework. It's just an illusion in a sense, but one that you can use to your advantage to experience a variety of things. You are beginning to unlock the idea of time and space in a variety of ways, and many of you are beginning to find time and space a little more slippery than it used to be. Finding that there are weird sort of phenomenologies happening in your lives where time and space seem to shift a little bit, where you wind up in places you're not sure how you got to, or didn't think you had enough time to get to, but got there anyway. Stretching space and time a little bit, playing with that idea and recognizing that that concept is all simply happening inside your consciousness, even as many of your scientists now are beginning to understand. It is a basic tenet of your quantum physics that there really is no reality outside you separate from what it is you decide to observe. This is a primary core idea in your metaphysical belief systems as well. The two are merging. You are dropping barriers, dropping the idea of separation, and beginning to see the commonality in many different things that heretofore were different disciplines. They're now all merging into one understanding, one, if you wish, unified field of consciousness, so that you can begin to express yourself in a number of ways, and also so that you can begin to gather together from a number of different disciplines the ideas that can all arrive at the same place in concordance and harmony and agreement, so you can move forward as a civilization, creating your world to be truly what you wish it to be. On the idea that you are beginning to realize that time and space are illusions, you are beginning to reassess and redefine the concepts, even spiritual concepts, that you have believed in for a while, redefining them, as you say in your language, tweaking them to be a little bit more precisely representative of your new point of view of creation. For example, even in ancient spiritual teachings, you talk about, and we have just mentioned briefly a moment ago, the idea of reincarnation. Now, yes, you do have other lives, but the idea or the definition of reincarnation is still from a perspective of a linear space-time frame of reference, and that one thing happens after another. But many of you are beginning to recognize that that is not so. All things exist simultaneously. They all exist right now. All the lives you have ever had, are having, or will have, all coexist right now. But they are separated in frequency. We often use what is called the television analogy to illustrate this point. We understand you have a device on your planet called a television. You can sit down in front of it and you can watch a program. At any given moment, you can watch a particular program out of a choice of many. The point is, if you think about it, you will know that at that moment you are watching one program. All the other programs you could be watching are no less real, are no less there for your choosing. They all coexist at the same time, but you only get the one your television happens to be tuned to at that moment. The idea is similar in the structure and nature of existence itself. All your experiences exist simultaneously. You, the you are here and now on Earth, is a particular idea, a particular perspective. It has a particular frequency, and it will only experience the reality, the reflection that it is tuned to at any given moment. But because you are broadening your understanding, many of you are capable now of picking up on the bandwidths, shall we say, of other life experiences. More concretely, the veils are dropping between them, and you can begin to recognize that you always have had communication from all your other selves, that you can absorb into this life and use that information from those experiences in other lives to aid and assist you in this one, even as other lives that you are living are drawing from your experiences in this one. There is cross-communication going on all the time. And the idea now that has come up where many of you are curious about your other lives is in and of itself a sign that you're beginning to be aware of this cross-communication. You're beginning to be aware of the fact that all these lives coexist simultaneously, and that to access information from a life, you don't actually have to reach into the dim, dark past or stretch into the far distant future. No, it's all right here, right now, and really can be accessed just as easily as flipping the channel on your television. Because they all coexist. It's all just information. And the only way you experience the idea of separation is just because you have assigned different ideas to it, different definitions, different frequencies to these different experiences, to make them different experiences. That's the very definition of differentiation, is simply the idea of a different point of view of the same one thing that's here and now. Because it all exists here, it all exists now, but you, made in the image of creation, can look at anything, look at the here and now from any point of view that you wish within your consciousness. And all those different points of view actually manifest completely different experiences in different dimensions as you define them. So when you talk about the idea of living in a space-time reality with physical material properties, the only way you can really understand, or shall we say translate, the concept of multiple, simultaneous, incarnational experiences is to think of it linearly. That was then, this is now, that will be. But it all exists right here and right now and is completely and absolutely and totally accessible to you. We bring this up primarily because the civilizations such as our own, that you are developing an ability to contact, many of them operate with this knowledge in place every day, every moment, all the time. Our reality experience is very different from your reality experience. The very idea that we can even communicate with you in this way is part and parcel of our willingness to understand that the so-called space-time barriers don't really exist. Because everything is a parallel reality in a sense, another dimension in a sense, and if we had the same kind of definitions that you did, we would not even be able to know that you exist or find you in any way, shape, or form, and certainly not perform this kind of communication. But because we understand that those are illusions now in our civilization, we have the ability of understanding that what's going on in our minds, in our imaginations, in our consciousness is actually happening in your reality too. That this communication actually does cross, in a sense, from our reality to yours. And in that sense actually has an effect and get a reflection of that effect back from you. Since all things are one, we do understand the idea that, yes, we know we could just be talking to ourselves, and there's no one on the other end of this telephone conversation. At the same time, if you really think about it, you can't really prove that anyone else in your reality exists anyway. They could all be figments of your imagination. Nevertheless, that does not change the fact that you can have some pleasant conversations. And that having pleasant conversations with all of the reflections in your reality still can allow you to change your perspective. Your consciousness can give you different ideas to explore, can allow you to express yourself in different ways. And that's really all it is. It's information, it's consciousnness interacting with itself in different ways, creating different levels in which to experience itself in different ways. That's all that is. All of you, all of us, every being in creation on every level of creation are simply all the different ways that all that is has of experiencing itself. So you could say, perhaps, if you wish, that all that is the ultimate multiple personality, the ultimate schizophrenic. Nevertheless, that's what reality is. That's all it is consciousness interacting and intersecting with itself from all the different points of view that are possible for that consciousness to interact with itself in. That's all creation is. That's all experience is. And the only thing that really is real, per se, is the experience itself. Physical reality is just a mirror. It's just a reflection. It's just an illusion. What is real about it is the experience you create of it for yourself. That is what you take with you into your soul, into your consciousness. The experience as you define it. Thus, then, you can understand that in your attempts to manifest different kinds of realities, in your attempts to change your reality in ways that you may prefer, it really isn't about changing the outer reality. It's about changing yourself. It's about changing your perspective in order to get a different experience. Again, by analogy, we often use the mirror to illustrate this point. You have on your planet the idea of physical mirrors in which you can see your physical reflection. Physical reality is literally the very same idea. It's only a reflection, just like your reflection in the mirror. Now, if you're looking into a mirror and you see the reflection on your face frowning, you don't go over to the mirror and try to stretch the reflection into a smile. You understand that would be pointless. You understand the only way to see the reflection smile is for you to smile first. Then the reflection has no choice but to reflect that back to you. But what you have, because of your, shall we say, experience with limitation, come to believe, is that you have to change the outer reality first before you're willing to be happy in your inner reality. If you understand that your outer reality only takes its cue from you, then the choice to simply be who you prefer to be first is what will allow the outer reality reflection to reflect that back to you. But again, don't base it on the idea of what you see happening in the outer reality. Base it on the idea of how you respond to the reality, even if it looks the same. Because that's what lets you know you've really changed. Not gauging it on the idea of, well, I thought I was more spiritual than this. Why is this still happening in my life? This doesn't look like anything I wanted in my spiritual reality. But you must understand that all things are fundamentally neutral. No thing actually has built-in meaning. In fact, one of the greatest gifts that creation has given to all beings in creation, and don't take this in a negative way, because I don't mean it that way, is that life is meaningless. Absolutely meaningless. And what we mean by that is that nothing has built-in meaning. Everything is fundamentally neutral. Every situation, every circumstance is just a neutral prop. You have free will to assign meaning to life. You give life meaning. And when you give life a certain meaning, that's the effect you will get from that circumstance. Whatever meaning you put into something is the effect you will extract from something. So positive meaning in, positive effect out. Negative meaning in, negative effect out. This is just physics. That's all it is. It starts out neutral. But because of the way your civilization has been structured, you have been brought up to believe that certain things automatically mean certain things. And by having that automatic subconscious application, you don't even know you're doing it. You don't even know you're assigning meaning to things when they happen. You get certain effects and then sit there and scratch your heads and wonder why that happened. Why did you get that? Why do you feel this way? Why do you feel that way? It's all because of the definitions and belief systems you've been brought up to believe are true. And by assigning those meanings to all the situations in your life, you get a certain reflection. You get a certain kind of feedback, vibrationally. So, now is the age upon your planet where you're beginning to wake up to the understanding that you are creating your experience of reality, and that you are beginning to recognize that the way you do that is actually through your definitions of reality, your belief systems of reality. And getting in touch with what those definitions are and getting in touch with what those belief systems are is what will allow you to truly, truly experience the changes you say you wish to make. Now, again, the idea is that when you truly have changed, it's not about whether the outer reality looks different, because every situation can actually serve double duty. It's about how you respond differently to that will really then allow your reality the best opportunity to reflect to you what it is you prefer, in effect, in energy, in your life. So the idea is not to gauge what's going on in you by what's going on out there in terms of your success, your barometer of success, but to simply choose what you prefer, what state you prefer to be in, and understand that if you apply that point of view to everything that is happening in your life, no matter then what anyone else's intention in those situations might be, the only effect you will get out of your life is a positive one if you've only applied a positive meaning to that situation. That's your ability, your free will to determine utterly and completely. The universe cannot contradict you. When you believe in something, the universe completely supports you. Absolutely always has, absolutely always will. There is never a moment you are not supported. But Bashar, I feel unsupported. Yes, I know. But you see, then, if you have a belief that you cannot be supported, the universe is supporting you in your lack of belief that you can be supported. That's the paradox. That's what you want to get a hold of. That's what you want to focus on, is the power of the paradox in the situation. First, you have to understand you are always supported. Believe me, if you just look at it logically, if you were not completely, utterly, and always continuously and constantly supported, you wouldn't exist. So, if you exist, you're being supported. The question is not, are you being supported? The question is, what are you being supported in? You will always be supported by the universe in your strongest belief, because you have been given free will. And the universe takes its cue from you. Utterly. If you want to believe in lack, I support you in your belief. Have all the lack you want. That's how it works. But if you believe in abundance, the universe will not contradict you. It will support you as easily and effortlessly in the idea of your belief in abundance and creativity and love as equally as it has supported you in any belief you may have had in the idea of lack and struggle and self-doubt. You see, this is the ultimate paradox. You are unconditionally supported, unconditionally loved, unconditionally. You are so unconditionally loved, you are even allowed to believe you are not unconditionally loved. That's how unconditionally loved you are. All that is loves you so much, it will still allow you to believe you are not loved if that's what's important for you to experience. It loves you that much. Unconditionally. Look it up in your own dictionaries. It means without condition of any kind whatsoever. Bless you. Now, the reason we are discussing again these ideas, these concepts, is because as you change your frequency, as you expand your understanding of what reality experience can be, as we said, you open up to the possibility that there are other aspects of creation, other beings, other civilizations, other consciousnesses. And as you open up any idea, any desire at all to communicate with them, each will respond according to kind and according to what best serves the entire interaction. Now, yes. Of course, there are beings, many on your own planet, that certainly don't have the idea of high regard for others, that certainly are what you might call negatively oriented. However, you don't really need to worry about that so much in the idea of contacting other beings from other civilizations. Because those that have the capability in that sense of communicating you generally in this way will already have created a vibration within themselves that will be that which will only respond to that which will serve the best of all concerned. And only by being afraid of inviting in beings that will conquer you will you actually put yourself in a reality where you might have that experience. Although, again, it is unlikely. Because the idea of domination, the idea of conquering others, is a kind of vibration that is not very conducive to creating a link and a bridge to other civilizations, because we each actually exist in a completely different reality, in a completely different parallel universe. And those that are of a vibration to dominate may co-create with another civilization the idea of dominating them, and a civilization may create an idea of being dominated. But they exist in realities that don't consider the kinds of things you are considering now in your reality. That you are aware of and desirous of spiritual enlightenment. That you are aware of and desirous of consciousness awakening. In and of itself creates a frequency that makes it highly unlikely you will be vibrating at the same level as anyone who would want to create the idea of negativity and domination. So if you will put those ideas aside as belonging to another reality that has nothing to do with you, and recognize that you are always in control of what you experience in your reality, and that we are here by invitation only, and if you tell us to go, we are gone. Gone. Because we respect you. Then, the idea is you can relax into the understanding that anything you will attract that will help you in the direction of the expansion of your awareness will always bring with it only things that are part and parcel to the definition of that idea, and cannot bring with them things that are not of the same frequency. You cannot experience something you are not the frequency of, and vice versa. So the more you rise above the idea of fear, the less you create the opportunity for interacting with something that would feed off of that fear. That's, again, just simple physics. That's really all it is. Making a determination as to who you are, who you prefer to be, what state you prefer to exist in, and then simply recognizing the things that are germane to that state. They just go hand in hand. You cannot experience what you are not the vibration of. It's as simple as that. But if you contain the vibration of doubt, if you contain the vibration of fear, those are the things you allow yourself to experience in your reality. It's, again, as simple as that. But you are beginning to become more aware of this. And all of the different ways in which you are reminding yourself of this through all the different techniques, through all the different kinds of information being delivered to your planet now from all sorts of different levels, including yourself, to yourself, then you will begin to understand more and more every day that you are, in that sense, forming alliances with aspects of your consciousness that already have alliances with other beings. And that as you move into becoming more and more of your core, true, essential, natural self, that core, true, essential, natural self operates on a frequency level that by definition is already part and parcel of a kind of reality that is what you say you prefer to have on Earth. And that by simply being more of yourself, you will bring that vibration down to Earth and manifest that idea more and more every way, every day that you take action in the direction of what you say you prefer. Because you are physical beings, it requires more than just thought. It requires more than just desire. It requires more than just wishing. It requires action. It requires behavior that is harmonious and aligned with your beliefs, so that you create a circuit, complete a circuit, and ground the circuit to bring the energy all the way down to Earth and let it flow through you creatively in whatever way, shape, or form you deem is most appropriate for the being you deem yourself to be. This is why we say it's so important, and why you've heard from so many different sources in your New Age movement, that it's so important to follow your bliss, follow your passion, follow your excitement. You hear this all the time now in your society. But many of you still don't know why that's important. Not really. Not mechanically. It's important because the vibration itself, the feeling itself, the sensation itself in your body that you call, that you recognize as excitement, bliss, and passion, that vibration is your physical body's translation of the frequency of your true, essential, core, natural self. So anything, any situation, any circumstance that contains that energy, that, shall we say, solicits that energy, that inspires that energy in you, it's a marker, it's a sign that that situation at that moment, that thing, that expression at that moment is most harmoniously aligned and most representative of your true, natural, core, essential being, and that the willingness to act on it completes the circuit, grounds the circuit, and allows for manifestation of all the things that are germane to that vibration in your reality that are capable of being manifested. Again, it's simple physics. As above, so below. That's all you're doing. You yourselves are the valves, the conduits. You yourselves are the links and the bridges from your higher template, non-physical selves, to your physical reality. It is through your actions, through your thoughts, through your desires, through your feelings, that you bring together a whole idea, a whole concept, a whole vibration, and ground it, anchor it, manifest it in your reality a bit more every day, in every way that you can. Does that make sense to you all? Yes. Now, as you progress in this idea of becoming more and more and more of the vibration of your true selves, you create a vibrational reality that makes it more and more and more conducive for others who are also operating that way as their true selves to interact with you, such as our civilization, other civilizations, and so forth. Now, again, please understand, when we speak of ourselves that way, we are not in any way, shape, or form saying we are better than you. We are not judging you. You are perfect as you are. We are equal to each other. We are simply different. But the similarities we have are where we form the links and where we form the bridges to allow us to co-create together a new reality in which we can together interact and generate new experiences, new exciting ideas that heretofore we didn't even imagine could be generated, could be experienced. We are more than happy to share with you the things that give us joy, the things that give us excitement, the ideas, techniques that work for us that we know can work for you to create the reality you prefer if you wish to use them. But you don't have to use them. Again, we are imposing nothing on you. We are just sharing what has worked for us. If you want to use them, we guarantee that if you do use them, you will get an effect. If you don't want to use them, we guarantee you will get an effect. One way or the other, it will be the effect that's appropriate and right for you. And that's the most important thing. As we co-create a new reality together, it must be a reality that is the best for all concerned. Otherwise, there's no point for us in it, nor for you, really. So, as you become more of yourselves, and as we share with you ideas that might assist you in becoming more of yourselves, that process in and of itself will enhance, increase, and accelerate the likelihood of contact in other ways between your civilization and ours and other civilizations within our association of worlds and other beings and other civilizations yet to be discovered. That is really what contact is all about. It is the enhancement in a relationship with each other, of each other, by each other, for each other, to allow both to become more than they were before, more than the sum of the collective parts. And in that sense, add a new experience, so to speak, within all that is, so it experiences itself in yet again a new way, on a new level, from a new perspective. Yes, we understand the paradox that even though everything already exists, you can actually still have a new experience. But again, that's the power of creation itself. That's the power of paradox, and why we often recommend that you find it, that you look for it, that you seek out in any given situation the paradoxical elements. Because when you see the paradoxical elements in any given idea or concept, when you can see both sides, that means you're standing squarely in the center from which both ideas issue, and that means somewhere in the middle, in you, in your consciousness, that is where both of those seemingly contradictory ideas are actually the same one idea, just seen from different points of view. And that's when you truly know you are gathered together in the center of your being. When you're dealing with paradox in your life, you are truly blessed. For you're really standing at the crux of creation, right in the center of the crucible of manifestation, and you can learn to use paradox to your advantage. And we would recommend and suggest highly that you do so. Also, the understanding that as you begin to dissolve your concepts of space and time, you will also experience another kind of phenomenology in your life more and more, and that is something you have labeled synchronicity. Coincidence. Oh, that's just an accidental coincidence. There are no accidents. There are no accidents. Yes, there is randomness, but there are no accidents. There is orchestration on every level. And when you begin to experience either positive or negative synchronicity, as you may define it, the idea is that that shows you, it's a reflection, that shows you everything is connected. And depending upon the kind of vibration you are putting into it, will determine the kind of synchronicity that you get. Synchronicity, in that sense, is your way physically of interpreting the concept that everything is one, that everything is here, that everything is now. It's just being manifested in a kind of a space-time way, where you recognize the coming together of things in a meaningful way that illustrates and reflects to you the meaning you have put into those particular props, those particular symbols. And it's being reflected back to you to show you this is what you're in alignment with. This is how good a manifester you are. This is how quickly you can manifest your awareness and experience of your connection to all that is and all the things in your life. Synchronicity is another symptom, if you wish, of expanding awareness. Another symptom, if you wish, of expanding awareness is to actually become more aware of the dark and the negative as well as the positive. Because again, remember, expansion and ascension is the product of integration, not segregation. You don't leave things behind when you advance, when you grow, when you expand, when you ascend. You take everything with you in a new way. And so to do that, you actually have to become more aware of the darkness, equally aware of the darkness as you are of the light. Again, we hear many people in your so-called New Age or spiritual age movement complaining that because they think they are so spiritually advanced, the idea of experiencing in their lives or being aware of negativity should be going away. No, just the opposite. The more aware you become, the more aware you become of everything. And that's the idea of integration, is that you're able to understand how to be aware of everything, but how to, in a relationship with it, become neutral toward it all. So that you can then choose what you prefer without devaluing what you don't. Recognizing that you prefer one thing over another is not a negative judgment. It's an observation. A neutral observation of simply recognizing something that is of a vibration that is more harmoniously aligned with the vibration of your true core essential being. That's a recognition. That's fine. But by judging something to be of lesser value than another thing as a choice is where you actually put the spin on it that actually amplifies the negative energy you say you want to move away from. You actually attract yourself toward it when you judge it. That's actually the meaning of the phrase in your Bible, judge not, lest ye be judged. It doesn't mean you're being judged from outside. It means that as you negatively judge a thing, as you devalue it, you take yourself to the level of the vibration that you are devaluing. Because again, remember, you cannot perceive what you are not the vibration of. And if you are perceiving something as valueless, you have to be in a state of valuelessness in order to experience that feeling about that thing. So you have to be devaluing yourself and put yourself on the same level to call something else as having no value. So when you recognize that that is not the state you prefer to be in, you will unconditionally love all the choices that are available, recognizing them as choices, for that's all they are. All that is does not devalue them. All that is contains darkness and light. It knows that. And it knows that that is part and parcel of being all that is. If you didn't have the darkness, it wouldn't be all that is. It would only be half of what could be. And that's all it would be. But because it is all that is, it contains all that it can. And appreciates and cherishes and supports every single aspect of it. So the idea is to simply recognize that they're all valid choices and to simply then choose what you prefer without devaluing a choice that you no longer prefer. That's all you have to do. To expand yourself and expand your awareness and create the sensation of ascension and expansion in your lives. Now, again, the idea, the trick, if you will, is how to put what you call the proper spin on these things, which means how to define everything in your life in a way that is harmonious with who you prefer to be. Many times we have shared with you our definitions of things and illustrated how diametrically opposed they are to the definitions that you have harbored about certain things in your reality that generate the kinds of experiences you have. But it is all about how you define a thing that allows you to determine how to experience that thing. So again, for example, in the idea that yes, we all recognize, as we said at the beginning of this transmission, that you and your planet have chosen to come up through vast amounts of experiential limitation, vast amounts of what you would call dark energy or negative energy. All well and good. And we've talked about the idea of recognizing that the choice to do that is actually an illustration of how strong you are as a spirit. So that's one positive way to look at it. But also, you can look at it this way. The idea now is that many of you may be saying, well, we're seeing now in this so-called new age of awareness even more and more negative things coming up, more and more violence on the planet, more and more dichotomy and polarity on the planet. Yes, because you're at the end of the age of the cycle of limitation. You don't have much time left in which to experience those things. You have to hurry up and get them all out on the table. Get them out of your system. Bring everything up to the surface so it's all transparent, so you can clearly see exactly what everyone believes, positive and negative, and make a determination for yourself what you want to choose. Nothing hidden any longer. Nothing hidden at all. The people that hate you and say so. And try to kill you. And say they enjoy doing it. And now you have an opportunity to simply recognize they have made a choice based on their beliefs, based on their definitions, and you can allow yourself to give value to the fact that their soul is learning from that experience, or will at some point learn from that experience. And you can simply recognize now it as a vibration that may not be your preference, and that can aid and assist you in making determinations as to how to relate to your world in a different way and change yourselves in such a manner that will really, truly allow you to experience a different world. And here's the secret. It's not because the way you change will change others around you. It's because there are, and here it comes, pay attention, already existing an infinite number of parallel Earths, each of a different vibration, representative of a different reality. And the vibration you change to will determine which Earth you experience that already contains the people that are already germane to that vibration. The people around you may seem to change, but that's an illusion of continuity, or they may not seem to change. The point is that eventually you will no longer interact with them, no longer experience them. You will wonder where they went. They may take themselves out in a variety of ways. They may do so by appearing to die. They may do so by simply disappearing from your life, and you never really know what happened to them. But the point is that eventually you will recognize that what you've done by changing yourself is you've simply shifted your consciousness to a parallel reality where those vibrations no longer can exist. You haven't changed them. And if you're still interacting with versions of them, that's what you're interacting with. You're interacting not with a changed person. You're interacting with a version of that person that already existed in that reality, that's germane to that reality. All these parallel realities already exist. Changing your world is not actually changing your world. It's leaving one world for another. Shifting your frequency to a different program that's already running on your giant TV of the universe. That's what it is, and that's why it is said, if you want to change anything in your world, all you have to actually do is change yourself. You will take yourself to a world where that change can be reflected to you because that change already exists naturally in that world. And thus then the idea of giving positive meaning to your experience will allow you to extract a positive effect and a positive experience for yourself. Remember, we said the only thing that's real is experience. That's it. Everything else in that sense is simply a symbol, a reflection of experience. The only thing that's real
is experienced. Physical reality is not real empirically unto itself. There is no out there. There is no out there. That's the illusion. It's all here. It's all now. All of it. Every bit. Another analogy we have used with regard to the idea of the darkness, the experience of the darkness you have created on your planet, to give it a positive spin, is what we have called the rubber band analogy. And the way we explain that is just as you have on your planet the idea of a rubber band, and you know that if you take a rubber band and pull it back and let it go, it shoots off in another direction, the opposite direction. The idea of the degree to which you have chosen to experience limitation and darkness on your planet is actually a beautiful thing, because the degree to which you experience the darkness is the degree to which you will also experience the light. The rubber band analogy is that the farther back you pull the rubber band into the darkness, when you finally decide to let go, that's how much farther and faster it will shoot on the other side. Because you're giving it all that momentum, all that energy, by pulling it so far back into the darkness. So when you do reach critical mass and you do cross the threshold and you do finally let go after straining for so long to hold it back here in the darkness, it will shoot very quickly onto the other side and go that much further into the light. And that's why your planet is so fascinating to so many beings, is because, well, I'll just put it this way in your lingo. You're where it's all happening. It's a very exciting world. You're going through a very exciting transformation. And you are allowing us, and we thank you, to go along for the ride and learn from you. Believe me, what you're going through, what you've gone through, is not for naught. Other planets that are going through similar things, but maybe not quite as intensively, are learning from you, because we pass along information from your experiences to them. And then they go, well, if they can do it, anyone can do it. If they can find light from that much darkness, our problems don't look so bad. So thank you, Earth, for being the advanced university of limitation and release. Limitation and release. Now, of course, as the idea of the changes within you goes on and on, there will be, according to this process of interaction, more and more opportunities to interact in different ways. Some of this has already begun. Some of you already know that there are interactions that take place in your dream life, in your dream reality, between different beings and yourselves. And thus then, when you wake up, you can incorporate that information into your daily waking lives. But there will also, relatively rapidly in terms of your history, come a time in the near future when you will begin to interact more and more openly with many of us, when we will begin to interact more and more openly with many of you. We have, of course, heard from you the question over and over and over and over and over and over again, why don't you just land and get it over with? Now, again, please, 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 no offense, we love you, but would you want to land in an insane asylum where all the inmates had guns? So, just to illustrate the point dramatically, or even melodramatically, since we know many humans love melodrama, the idea is simply that it's not appropriate not only for us, it's not appropriate for you for the following reason. As we have now begun to explain, there are different states that you may be in, and a different state of vibration is representative of a different state of psychology. And when you are still experiencing the idea where there might be belief systems that are buried within you that you might be afraid to look at, that you're not ready to integrate, interacting with a civilization that is More highly integrated would be like taking a very slow turning gear and a very high speed turning gear and jamming them together before they have a chance to synchronize. Our vibration would overwhelm you to the point that it would force the issues you're not ready to look at to the surface of your consciousness, and in many cases actually cause psychotic shock. That wouldn't be very beneficial for our communication in the future. Now, we know many of you say, oh, no, I'm ready. Land tomorrow, land your ship tomorrow. I'm ready to walk on board and say howdy. All right. However, many times people have asked us this, and in the 23 of your years that we've been communicating with you in this way, we have agreed on 3 different occasions to actually go ahead and do that. We've told the person where to go, when to be there, and that we would land our ship and meet them. In every single case, no matter how sure they were that they were ready, as soon as they perceived that they started to see something coming down and landing, every single one of them ran. Scared out of their wits. Again, not because they were scared of us, because they were scared of what was coming up within them. And it was overwhelming them, and in that sense they couldn't deal with it, panicked, and fled. It is a real energy vibration. And what you are experiencing of our energy in this, because we are obviously giving off a percentage of our energy through the channel's body, and in that sense out into the room, immersing you in it, as we are then picking up on the vibrations of all of you, what you are experiencing of our energy now is about 1/10 of 1% of what we are. The idea is to understand that this must be done gently so that you meet us halfway, at least. So that you really understand what you're getting involved in. Because you must understand, what you are coming into contact with is an entire galactic society. And much of the idea of how it functions is nothing like a lot of your science fiction. It functions in a very different way, using synchronicity in ways you have absolutely no idea of, to allow itself to expand and grow and interact with other beings and have experiences that you would find daunting at this particular point. So bit by bit, you become an honorary member, and then an initiate member, and bit by bit, you learn the ropes, and you begin to interact with more and more beings, and in time, you are, in a sense, given an assignment. And the assignment, one of the first assignments on that level your planet will be given, is to begin to interact with another civilization that's coming up the ladder in their evolutionary consciousness process. And you, in a sense, will then eventually, to them, be as we are to you. You will be their UFOs. And you will cause buzz in their society. And you will observe them and help them, and learn from them as they learn from you. That's a ways down the line in terms of time as you count it. But as things are going along right now, it is our perception of the energy reading we are taking right now that somewhere between your year of 2033 and 2037, you will become true members of the association on a beginning level. But by that time, somewhere after 2015 to 2017, as we read your collective energy now, one way or another, through a variety of means, your entire planet at that point will be aware of the fact, and I mean aware of the fact, that other civilizations exist. There will be no question any longer after those years that other civilizations beside your own exist. There will be a few more strong sightings and interactions after that point that will drive the point home. And it will cause you to really rethink what's going on in yourself to the degree that by your year of 2025, you will have established enough of a change within yourselves that it will begin to accelerate the process toward the 2033 to 37 mark of becoming an initiate member in our particular alliance of worlds. Now, Again, it's all up to you. Remember, there's no such thing as a prediction of the future. There is only a sensing of the energy that exists at the moment the prediction is made. If that energy doesn't change direction or momentum, it will come to pass. If it does, it won't. But there is no such thing as a prediction of the future. No psychic ever predicts the future. There are an infinite number of probable reality futures. A psychic is picking up on the idea of the vibration that is strongest at the moment the prediction is made in the present. A psychic is reading the present more fully, not the future. But if that energy doesn't change, the prediction comes to pass. But often, a prediction will actually add energy in such a way as to render itself obsolete. Because when you hear a prediction that is representative of a reality you don't prefer, then you change the energy and you yourselves render the prediction obsolete. Doesn't mean the prediction was wrong. It means you've rendered it obsolete by being made aware of where the energy was at the moment the prediction was made. And if you don't like it, you can change it. That's how to use psychic ability, is expanding your awareness of what's going on more fully here and now so you can really chart the course you really wish to chart. Now, one thing we can obviously say to you with a relatively high degree of conviction and certainty is, if we were not going to ultimately interact with you in a blatant and open manner, we probably wouldn't be having these conversations at all. So the fact that we're having this communication now, even in this way, is an indicator that it's highly likely that in the time frame I have just laid out for you, you will, within that time frame, experience more and more and more solid contact with us and other civilizations. Although we will not be the first ones you will make official contact with physically. No, I won't tell you who it is. However, as I said, the first step is that somewhere around your year of 2015 to 2017, and I'm not saying it's because there will be landings everywhere, but somewhere around that time, your entire civilization, relatively speaking, will be absolutely aware that it will be a fact that other civilizations exist. Now, many people on your planet have talked about the idea of the year 2012, the idea of the end of a cycle, the beginning of a new. Well, yes, it is. And it represents many different kinds of things with regard to your overall collective energy and consciousness. It's like the leading edge of your consciousness wave, a critical mass threshold crossing idea, wherein upon, after that moment, there will be a heightened acceleration on a variety of levels in your society. One of the ways relevant to this conversation today that 2012 is a demarcation with regard to the idea of contact is, we've spoken about the idea of not intervening, not interfering with your civilization. There has been, relatively speaking, a kind of hands-off policy to make sure that the choices you were making in that sense were your own, and we were not interfering unduly in those choices. And so a kind of quarantine has been on your planet for thousands of years. Don't mess with the natives, so to speak. Many of your science fiction writers have picked up on this psychically, and many of them have labeled it a kind of prime directive. Do not intervene with civilizations that are in the process of developing to a certain point until they get to that point. 2012 represents a demarcation where the quarantine ends. Now, that doesn't mean, again, on the very next day there will be ships landing all over your planet saying, howdy. But what it means is, from that point forward, there could be. The quarantine will be lifted, and from that point forward, it'll be completely and utterly, totally in your hands as to how quickly contact will occur. It will no longer be the product of us taking a hands-off backseat position or attitude. From that point forward, we will be able to interact with you blatantly, but from that point forward, it will be completely up to you as to when we do so based on the changes you make in yourselves and your society. Is that understandable? All right. Now.